Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Let's dive straight into the story that flipped my life upside down over a plate of mashed potatoes and polite smiles. The spoon never hit the floor. That's what stuck with me. Everything else blurred. The awkward silence, the clinking glasses, the forced cough someone made to fill the void she left in the air. But the spoon? It stayed right there, balanced on the edge of her bowl like the universe didn't dare interrupt her exit. She stood up mid-bite, looked me dead in the eyes across the table, then turned to my mother and said, "You know, I could leave him whenever I want. No build-up, no fight, no context. Just that sentence carved into the room like it belonged there." I didn't say a word. Not right away. I just looked down at the green beans I'd taken too much of, as if they were about to whisper some kind of explanation. But they didn't. Instead, I stood up, quietly, methodically, walked past my cousin nervously chewing her lip and my dad pretending not to be horrified. I grabbed my wife's purse from the coat rack, set it by her chair, then turned to her and said, "Then let me help you pack." She blinked, once, slowly, like she was waiting for the punchline. But it never came, because I wasn't joking. She'd spent the last 4 months picking me apart with passive comments and distant eyes, like some sculptor chiseling a statue she never planned to finish. And pathetic, hopeful me, I just kept standing there, handing her sharper tools. Not anymore. That night, after she stormed out, I packed everything she owned into boxes I had to borrow from my neighbor, labeled each one with black marker. Shoes, dresses, gym stuff. Which is hilarious because she always left in leggings and came back in heels. I wasn't stupid, just scared to connect the dots. Until dinner. Until that one sentence. She came back at 2:13 a.m. I was still up. Not waiting, just existing. Like a houseplant that hadn't been watered in weeks but was too stubborn to wilt. She didn't knock. She had a key. But when she saw the hallway lined with cardboard and tape, she laughed. "You're being ridiculous," she said. I didn't answer. I just handed her the box labeled "Other People's Lies." It had her second phone in it, the one she thought I didn't know about. Her face dropped, and that's where the real story begins. She didn't touch the box, just stared at it like it might explode. The label "Other People's Lies" was more than dramatic. I know that, but I'd spent the last few hours feeling like an unpaid extra in my own marriage, and I wanted her to flinch. She didn't. Instead, she smiled. A slow, measured, almost rehearsed smile. "You've really lost it?" she whispered, walking past the boxes like they weren't stacked with every clue I'd collected but never confronted her with. I followed her into the kitchen, where she poured herself a glass of water like it was any other night. "You were at Eric's," I said. She didn't deny it, didn't confirm it either. Just sipped and raised an eyebrow, daring me to push. Eric, her coworker, the guy she once said looked like a malnourished scarecrow with gym shoes. But funny how often she laughed at his texts. Funny how I once caught her mouthing, "I'm alone," while answering his call. Funny how I became the ghost she lived with while someone else got the real her. "You're making a scene over something that doesn't matter," she said, placing the glass down like she hadn't just shattered our reality 3 hours ago in front of my family. I walked over to the box, opened it slowly, pulled out the phone, the second one I found taped under the back seat of her car 2 weeks ago. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. Just the sight of it made her go pale. "You're insane," she snapped, grabbing for it. But I stepped back. "Where did you get that?" "You should be more careful," I said. "Not every mechanic is as dumb as you think." Her eyes darted to the door, like fight or flight had been activated. But I wasn't finished. "There are texts," I continued. "Pictures, reservations, whole weekends you were with Jenna, that you were actually somewhere in New Hampshire with him." That hit. Her hands dropped. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. "I didn't say anything," I said, softer now, "because I wanted to believe it was just emotional. I told myself it would pass, that maybe it was a phase. But then tonight, in front of everyone, you humiliated me like I was nothing, like all of this meant nothing. I waited for an apology, for a lie, for something. What I got was worse. She said, "You weren't supposed to look." Just that. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "It's not what it looks like." No denial. No tears. Just a cold confirmation that the truth existed, but I wasn't meant to find it. And that's when I realized it wasn't just betrayal. It was intentional. Everything she said, every action, every distance she created. It was all a slow push toward the edge, hoping I'd jump so she wouldn't have to be the villain. Well, I didn't jump. I packed. And tomorrow, she'd wake up to a house where her name was just a faint echo on a lease I was about to change. But before that, I had one more surprise for her. Because if she thought the phone was the only thing I found, she was about to learn just how much I'd really known. The next morning, I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My body lay still in bed, but my mind was sprinting, crashing into the same question over and over again. How long had she been planning to leave me? While pretending not to, Daphne stayed in the guest room. I heard her rummaging around for a charger, pacing, whispering into her phone at one point. I didn't ask who she was talking to. I already knew. By 8 a.m. she was gone. No note, no explanation. Just a sink full of last night's wine glasses and the soft scent of her perfume hanging in the hallway. I stood in the doorway for a long time, staring at the gap in the shoe rack where her boots used to sit, like that absence somehow meant something larger than it should have. Around noon, I was dragging one of the boxes toward the garage when the doorbell rang. I assumed it was Daphne, maybe coming back to argue or cry or collect the rest of her things. I braced myself for a fight, but when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was Eric. I didn't recognize him at first. He looked different than the few filtered photos I'd seen on her work page. Taller in person, thinner, sharper. He didn't smile, didn't flinch, just stood there holding something in his hand like it was radioactive. "Lowell, right?" he asked. His voice was softer than I expected. I didn't answer. "We need to talk." I should have slammed the door in his face, but I didn't. I stepped aside. He walked in like he didn't belong in his own skin. I watched him glance at the boxes, then at the empty wall hooks, then down at the phone still on the coffee table, the one Daphne never took with her. "I didn't come here to defend her," he said after a long silence. "I came here because I just found out she lied to me too. That stopped me. She said you were separated," he continued, "that you were living apart, that you had some kind of arrangement. I didn't want to get involved with a married woman. I never would have. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. She's been staying with me off and on," he added. "But this morning she was gone. Left her bag, her jacket, everything. Just vanished. So it wasn't just me she abandoned. It was him too." He handed me a small flash drive. "I don't know what's on this exactly, but I found it in her laptop bag last week. Thought it was a work file. It's not." I hesitated before taking it. "She told me once she was building a new life," he said quietly. "Said she just had to finish something first. I guess we were both just placeholders." I closed the door behind him without saying much. I didn't have the words. My hands trembled as I plugged the drive into my laptop. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. What I found wasn't what I expected. It was worse. Dozens of folders, each named after cities. New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Boston. Inside each videos, voice memos, screenshots, conversations, recordings of calls with people I didn't know. Her voice, his voice, other voices, her talking about strategy, about manipulation, about the long game. She wasn't just cheating. She was orchestrating something, playing with people's lives. And I had just scratched the surface. The first video started with nothing but static and her voice in the background, muffled but unmistakably Daphne. She was talking on the phone, pacing in what looked like a hotel room. I recognized the curtains, cheap, beige corporate. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed even, like someone practicing a sales pitch she'd given 100 times before. "He thinks we're just going through a rough patch. Poor guy. Still leaves notes in my lunch bag." My stomach twisted. She laughed then, quiet, almost fond. "But I'll time it right. Once the promotion hits, I can flip everything. The accounts, the property, the sympathy. I've got him so emotionally wound up. He'd sign anything if I cried hard enough. I hit pause. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared at the screen like it might change if I looked at it long enough. The folders weren't just evidence of an affair. They were blueprints. Campaign. A carefully built, long-term plan to squeeze everything out of me. Financially, legally, emotionally, before walking away like she was the victim. In another folder, I found PDFs. Legal drafts. Fake messages. Even a screenshot of a fake email thread where she wrote messages pretending to be me, cold, manipulative, borderline abusive. The kind of stuff that, in court, would paint me as the monster. She'd been building a false narrative behind my back for over a year. And I didn't see it. Why? Because I wanted to believe the silence between us was just a phase. That the detachment was stress. That the smiles she gave other people weren't withheld from me intentionally. But they were. That night I didn't eat. I just sat in the living room surrounded by open boxes, holding a flash drive that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The more I clicked through it, the more I realized this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a performance. A well-orchestrated exit strategy with me as the clueless stage prop. Then something strange happened. Around midnight, I got a message from an unknown number. Just 3 words. Did you see? No name. No context. I didn't respond. Another message followed. I tried to warn you 6 months ago. My blood froze. I checked the area code. It was from our city. Then a third message came in. Meet me tomorrow. It's bigger than you think. She's done this before. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to tell myself it was spam or some twisted prank. But deep down, I knew better. Because somewhere in that mess of files, I remembered seeing a folder titled Ashland, a city we've never been to, one of the many cities in her archive of deception. I searched through the Ashland folder again, and there she was, in a restaurant sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. They looked happy, familiar, comfortable, and in one of the audio files I heard it clearly. Same script, same laugh, same plan. The only difference? The name of the man she was destroying. I didn't sleep that night. I just waited for morning and the meeting with the person behind the messages. Someone who knew Daphne. Someone who had survived her once before. But what he told me next made everything I had seen so far feel small. The diner was half empty when I arrived, the kind of place that always smelled like burnt coffee and bleach. I chose a booth near the window, heart pounding harder than I cared to admit. 10 minutes passed before the door opened and he walked in. A man in his early 40s, trench coat, tired eyes, and a limp in his right leg. He looked like someone who had seen too much and survived just enough to regret it. He sat across from me without shaking hands or introducing himself. He just looked me in the eye and said, "You're Lowell." I nodded, unsure if I should speak first. Before I could, he pulled out a small manila envelope and slid it across the table. "Your wife's name isn't Daphne. At least it wasn't when I knew her. She went by Elise when she was with me." I opened the envelope. Inside were photos, grainy, taken years ago, but there was no mistaking her face. Her smile, her posture, even the way she held her wine glass. But her hair was darker, her clothes plainer. In every picture, she was wrapped around this man like they'd known each other forever. "She did the same thing to me," he said. "Met me at a tech convention. Said she was a freelance consultant. We hit it off. She moved in within 3 months. Said all the right things, played the perfect partner. Until I started noticing the withdrawals." He looked away for a moment like he was reliving it. "She drained 3 of my accounts. Opened a credit card in my name. Told my friends I was emotionally abusive. Filed a false report when I tried to confront her. I lost everything, my job, my apartment, my reputation. I only cleared my name 2 years later, after she'd already vanished." I sat there stunned. "She's not just cheating, Lowell," he continued. "She's cycling. You're probably victim number 6, 7. She builds a story, frames the guy, cashes out, disappears. Why are you helping me?" I finally asked. He hesitated. Because you looked like me in that photo your cousin posted last year. The one at your anniversary dinner. She was already planning your exit then. I could see it in her body language. The way she leaned slightly away from you. The same way she did with me right before it all went to hell. I tried to breathe, but the air felt heavy. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the horrifying realization that I was part of a pattern. A carefully calculated machine she had perfected over time. He leaned in. She's got aliases in at least 4 states. I've tracked some of them. And I think she's planning something even bigger now, maybe insurance, maybe corporate theft. Whatever it is, it's not just personal this time. She's gotten smarter. I looked down at the photos again, then at my phone. No new messages. No missed calls. Just silence from a woman I thought I knew. I used to think the distance between us was a slow burn of marriage fatigue. But now I knew better. She's not coming back, is she? I whispered. The man shook his head. She's probably already halfway to her next life. I asked him one final question before I left. How do you move on from something like this? He didn't answer. Just slid his coffee cup away and said, You don't, but you do get smarter. And if you're lucky, you stop someone else from becoming the next chapter in her story. I walked out of that diner more hollow than angry. I thought finding out the truth would bring closure or clarity, or maybe even relief. But it didn't. It brought weight. The weight of every lie, every smile, every night she kissed me knowing she had one foot out the door. And yet, I still hadn't hit rock bottom. Because the worst was still waiting for me at home. I was halfway up the driveway when I noticed the envelope on the porch. No address, no stamp, just my name, Lowell, written in sharp black ink across the center. It was crooked, rushed, like whoever left it didn't want to be seen. I picked it up, expecting another blow, maybe another lie. But as I stepped inside and peeled it open, I realized this wasn't from her. Inside were 2 things. A folded piece of paper and a small plastic bag containing a key. The note was short, printed in all caps. Check Unit 104, Miller Storage. She's been using it for months. I froze. I didn't know who sent it. Maybe it was the man from the diner. Maybe it was someone else she had burned along the way. But whoever it was, they wanted me to see something she never meant for anyone to find. By the time I arrived at the storage facility, it was raining. Not the cinematic kind of rain that looks dramatic under streetlights, but the miserable kind that seeps into your socks and makes everything feel colder than it is. The place was deserted, which only made the unease in my gut worse. I walked down the long corridor of metal doors until I found 104. I slid the key into the lock and turned. The first thing that hit me was the smell, like old perfume and forgotten secrets. Inside were a few nondescript boxes, a cheap desk, a duffel bag, and a corkboard nailed to the back wall. The corkboard stopped me in my tracks. It was covered in pinned photos, flight itineraries, sticky notes, and a map with red strings connecting cities. Boston, Ashland, Raleigh, Tampa, Denver. Every city had a name next to it. Every name was a man's name, and in the center of it all, my face. My actual face, printed from a photo I didn't even know existed. A candid shot of me walking out of my office building, coffee in hand, looking tired and small and completely unaware that I was being watched. Next to my photo, there was a note. Final phase, Q4/property and exit. Final phase, property and exit. When threatened, retreats instead of confronts. Use guilt. Craves peace. Will avoid escalation. Leverage during legal separation. Still wears wedding ring at work. Attachment equals blind spot. I wanted to scream, punch a wall, break something, but all I did was sit on the floor and whisper, "Why me?" over and over again like it might summon an answer from the silence. But the answer was there, pinned on the board, written across every thread of this sick project. Because I was easy, predictable, soft, and now I was disposable. I left everything as it was, took nothing, not because I didn't want proof, but because I needed one more thing, confirmation. I needed to look her in the eyes one last time and ask her who she really was. And as fate would have it, I wouldn't have to wait long. Because while I was standing in the pouring rain, trying to figure out how to breathe again, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Daphne. 3 words. We need to talk. Ons. Just those 4 syllables, as if we were still a married couple dealing with a disagreement about what color to paint the hallway. I stared at the message for over an hour before replying. When and where? Her answer came back instantly. Cafe downtown. 9 a.m. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I watched the sun rise behind a haze of rain and memories, trying to figure out how I was supposed to look her in the face without breaking. Or worse, without letting her break me again. When I arrived, she was already there. Sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a mug like it might ground her to this world. She looked normal, not like a con artist. Not like a woman with 5 fake identities and a corkboard filled with psychological warfare. Just Daphne. Or Elise. Or whatever her name really was. She smiled when she saw me, like nothing had happened. Thanks for coming, she said softly. I said nothing. She leaned forward. Look, I know this is messy, but I didn't expect it to get this far. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed. A small, bitter sound that surprised even me. You built an entire exit strategy like it was a corporate acquisition, I said. You recorded me. You mapped out how to destroy me. What part of that didn't involve hurting me? Her eyes dropped to her cup. It's not personal. Not personal? I repeated. You were my wife. She inhaled sharply, like she was preparing to lie again but then changed her mind. I've done this before, she admitted. But never like this. You were different. Because I was easier to manipulate? I asked. She winced. Because you were decent. You made it hard to go through with it. There it was. The sick irony. That my kindness delayed her betrayal, but never stopped it. I'm not here for closure, I said. I want the truth. All of it. She looked up, finally meeting my eyes. For the first time, there was something close to sincerity in her expression. Maybe even shame. I needed security, she said. Money. Options. The men before you, they were all the same. Controlling, arrogant, obsessed with power. But you made it too easy. And I got comfortable. I thought I could disappear without the damage. But you didn't disappear, I said. You left a trail. That wasn't me, she said quickly. Someone planted that. The storage unit? I didn't think you'd find it. My blood went cold. Then who did? She looked around like someone might be listening, then leaned in again. There's someone else. He used to help me, keep things clean, quiet. I cut him out after the last job. He didn't take it well. A new piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The man who met me in the diner. The anonymous envelope. The message saying she had done this before. They weren't warnings. They were bait. Someone wanted me to see behind the curtain. What does he want? I asked. She shook her head. He wants to ruin me. Maybe you too. He thinks we both deserve it. I didn't respond. I was done being pulled by the threads of her twisted stories. I'm leaving the country, she said finally. I've already booked it. You won't hear from me again. I stood up. She reached for my wrist, but I pulled away. You already left, I said. All I did was open the door. As I walked out of the cafe, the sun broke through the clouds. Just a sliver. Just enough to remind me that even in the middle of wreckage, something eventually shifts. But I wasn't done yet, because on my windshield, tucked beneath the wiper blade, was another note. No envelope. No name. Just one line. If you think this is over, meet me tonight. The note on my windshield haunted me the whole drive home. If you think this is over, meet me tonight. No address. No contact. But taped on the back was a business card from the storage facility. Unit 111 circled in red ink. I didn't know what to expect anymore. Another trap? Another player in this twisted game? Still, I went. I showed up just before sunset. The air was heavy, humid, and charged with the kind of tension you can't quite name. Unit 111 was toward the back, tucked behind a row of rarely used sheds. I approached with cautious steps, expecting another lie, another reveal, maybe even another face from her past. But when I opened the door, I didn't find more secrets. I found peace. Inside was a single envelope sitting on a foldable table. Taped above it on the wall was a photo, an old one of me and Daphne taken years ago before any of this started. We were on a pier, laughing. Back when I believed love was enough. The note inside wasn't from her. It was from the man who had warned me in the diner. It said, "You deserved to know, but now you deserve to live. Walk away. She's gone. She won't come back. And you, Lowell, are still standing. That means something." I didn't realize it then, but that message freed me. For weeks, I kept expecting her to return, to send another message, to find a way to twist the knife again. But she didn't. She vanished, as she always did. But this time without taking me down with her. The aftermath was quiet. I changed the locks, canceled every account tied to her name. I sold the house, not out of spite, but because it no longer felt like home. I moved into a small place downtown, close to a bookstore and a coffee shop that remembers my name. I started over, not with someone else, but with myself. And slowly, the weight lifted. I stopped checking the shadows. I started sleeping again. I even pulled out an old notebook and began writing. Not to make sense of everything, but to let it go. And here's the truth I never thought I'd be able to say. I'm okay. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm still a little cautious, sure, but I'm also wiser. And as strange as it sounds, I'm grateful. Not for her, but for the strength I found in the ruins she left behind.